You picked your best friend? Enjoy drowning in debt. I'll be out here, swimming in peace.
For nearly 3 years, being with Hannah wasn't just enjoyable. It was the most meaningful part of my existence. Let me explain my perspective. My job as an attorney plunges me into a nonstop stream of human misery. Every day I witness deception, infidelity, and betrayal in ways that most people couldn't even imagine. Sometimes it's symbolic. Often it's painfully literal. By the time I walk out of the courtroom, any shred of optimism I had about people is usually erased. But then I'd step through the front door, and there she was, Hannah. Just seeing her felt like fresh air rushing into a suffocating space. Sharp as a blade and always one step ahead, she could recite statutes with the same ease others recall lines from sitcoms. She held a paralegal position, but her vision stretched far beyond that. Law school was just the beginning. She wanted a legacy, something that would last. That drive? I admired it deeply. She wasn't lost or unsure. She was going somewhere, and I was lucky enough to witness the journey up close. This wasn't some casual romance. We were laying down the foundation of a life together. And I don't mean through curated posts or picture-perfect stories. I'm talking about actual tangible effort. I invested years renovating the place we lived in. Every board I cut, every brushstroke, every hardwood plank I restored. It was all for the two of us. This wasn't about picking up the tab for someone chasing the next Instagram-worthy meal. I was crafting a space where I hoped we'd build a future as husband and wife. That felt genuine. That felt true. And yet, there was always this low-level disturbance I could never quite shut off, like that barely audible hum coming from some unseen speaker. Not loud enough to ruin the music, but once you notice it, it's impossible to ignore. That quiet interference, it had a name. Colton. Colton, the so-called best friend from her university days. Supposedly innocent, practically family, or so she claimed. But for someone so benign, he managed to stay deeply embedded in our daily lives, constantly circling, ever present, with that unmistakable air of self-satisfaction. He called himself a graphic designer, but really he was drawing taco menus and throwing clip art peppers next to the word spicy, like it was modern art. He'd drop lines like, "I could never sell out to the corporate machine. I'd rather struggle than give up my freedom." And I'd answer with, "Yeah, Colton, you're a true hero, sacrificing stability and dental coverage for the greater good." The man was always behind on rent, naturally, but Hannah would defend him like he was some underappreciated visionary. "He's just not materialistic like you, Austin." "Exactly," I'd say, because rent, food, and gas are just silly capitalist burdens for someone who prefers Uber's authenticity. To her, he was a symbol of loyalty, someone who had supported her during rough times. To me, he was a sponge with an ego problem, and I'm convinced his favorite hobby was throwing shade at our relationship. He was crafty about it. Nothing I could call out directly. No, Colton had mastered the art of the backhanded compliment. "Man, you must be exhausted always in a suit, staying late at work." Couldn't be me. Translation? "Your boyfriend's a boring drone, Hannah." Or, "This place is nice and all, but doesn't it creep you out to invest years in one spot when you could be out exploring?" Translation: Austin's stuck in the mud, unlike me, the worldly burrito artist. His words were laced with fake admiration. And don't get me started on Brian, Hannah's ex, the musician who treated her like trash. Colton brought him up like it was some form of poetry. Say I surprised her with a week in Mexico. Flights, hotel, everything covered. And sure enough, Colton would show up with, "Remember when we went on that unplanned camping trip, Hannah?" Always in that soft, moody tone, like he was voicing an indie film trailer. Spontaneous moments like that, you can't recreate them. You just need someone who understands your soul. Translation: Austin is predictable. He's safe. He wears belts and files his taxes early. And the worst part? Hannah ate it up. Her eyes lit up like he was quoting sacred wisdom. Colton would sit there grinning like a smug life coach with great hair. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, cool, I'm competing with s'mores, smoke, and a dude who avoids deodorant because it's not organic. Whenever I gently suggested Colton might be crossing a line, Hannah snapped into courtroom mode, defending him on principle. "That's just who he is, Austin. He helped me through Brian breaking my heart." "Right," I said once. "And now it's his full-time gig to make sure you remember it." That earned me the look, mouth tight, like she just bit a lemon. "He's just protective. He's basically family." "Family," I said. "Sure. Because family totally tries to sabotage your relationship with poetic metaphors about bonfires and destiny. Got it. I'm a guy who plays the long game. I have to. My profession teaches you not to jump the tool. Let people talk. Let them get comfortable. You wait. You watch. Eventually, they'll tie their own noose. So I waited. I waited for Colton to hand me that rope. It all came to a head about a month down the road. I had just wrapped the most important legal battle of my entire career. 6 months of my life consumed. Endless nights, with barely any sleep. Weekends buried under towers of documents high enough to violate building codes. But the effort paid off. We came out victorious. And not just any win. The kind that makes the senior partners clap you on the back like you just landed a man on Mars. A major victory for the firm. And yeah, a personal triumph for me too. So I decided to celebrate with a proper dinner party. Just my closest friends. The people I'd barely seen in half a year because I'd been buried alive under case files. Everyone together in one space again. And since I was still pretending to be the mature adult, I told Hannah she could invite some of her people as well, which obviously meant Colton was on the list. Because apparently wherever Hannah showed up, her self-satisfied little sidekick followed like a shadow with Wi-Fi. At first, the evening was perfect. Laughter filled the rooms, music floated through the air. The house buzzed with that rare warmth that only good company brings. I opened a bottle of high-end wine I'd been saving for something truly meaningful. And for once, I was genuinely at ease. Enter Colton. Enter. Making an entrance like he'd been cast in a one-man play, already halfway through someone else's drink, acting like my house had his name on the deed. And just to test my composure, he decided it was time to perform. He launched into some drawn-out story about a modern art show he'd seen. But of course, it wasn't about the exhibit. It was about him. There's always a rift between those who create and those who conform, he declared. It's just a fundamentally different lens on life. And naturally, he aimed that line right at me. Because I wear a tie, I must be some spreadsheet-worshipping robot incapable of vision, like I'm swimming in money bags and bathing in routine. Some chase passion and expression, he added, staring into his glass like he was in a perfume ad. Others choose to be dependable. And with that, he took a dramatic sip of my wine, like he was auditioning for the villain in a drama series. I caught the look on my friends' faces, all twisted up like they'd bitten into something sour. One of them even mouthed, "Who brought this guy?" I barely stopped myself from gesturing toward Hannah and mouthing back, "Go ahead, take a guess." I responded with a tight, practiced smile, the one I wear in court when I'm politely waiting for a witness to implode. The kind that says, "I could take you apart in front of a jury, but tonight I'll play nice." But Colton wasn't done. He never is. He turned to Hannah and put on his concerned friend mask, the one I'm pretty sure he rehearses while doodling taco graphics. "I just want what's best for you, Hannah," he said, his voice oozing fake empathy strong enough to drown a dog. Then he turned toward me with this mock angelic grin. "Austin's a great guy," he said. "Stable, responsible, solid." He said solid like it was a character flaw, like I'd just confessed to loving beige wallpaper. Then he paused, looked me straight in the eyes, and let that smug little grin bloom. "But come on," he added slowly, savoring every word. "You have to admit, she could easily find someone better." And just like that, he handed me the rope, neatly gift-wrapped in arrogance, and I was more than ready to put it to use. The entire room froze. You could hear the tension, or maybe just the faint hum of Colton's ego deflating. My friends shifted in their chairs like they were actively restraining the urge to leap across the table and redefine his idea of artistic expression. Hannah didn't speak. She stared at her plate, face pink, not angry, not outraged, just plainly humiliated. He hadn't shocked her with what he said, just with how boldly he said it. Like the issue was his phrasing. Not that he tried to steal the spotlight in my own house. That was when something in me changed. Focus snapped into place. Everything sharpened. The calm, collected attorney who lets people ramble? Gone. Buried. What remained was the man who'd just been insulted in his own home by a grown man freeloading off his generosity like some uninvited raccoon in a hoodie. I set my utensils down slowly. No rush. Let the silence do the work. Then I leaned back in my seat, folded my hands, and locked eyes with him. The party host was gone. Now they were face to face with the prosecutor. Court was in session. "Well, that's quite a statement, Colton," I said, my voice calm but razor sharp. The kind of tone that makes jurors lean in because they know something's about to happen. I'd love to hear your logic. He blinked. The smirk slipped. His face started to register that this wasn't going the way he thought. In your expert opinion, I went on, what traits define someone better suited for Hannah? Be specific. Walk us through your criteria. Colton looked like he'd just been handed a pop quiz in a language he didn't speak. He stammered. Somebody more aligned with her, creative energy. Someone who truly gets her. I nodded, slowly, as if I were pretending to take mental notes like a judge hearing a weak argument. I see. So creativity is your baseline requirement. That's your standard? I tilted my head, offering the kind of smile that says, please dig deeper. And I assume you believe you meet that standard? I think I understand her more than anyone else, he said, puffing out his chest like he'd just solved climate change. Excellent, I replied, fingers laced, letting the weight of the room settle. So we've established that you are the benchmark. I leaned in just slightly, keeping my voice smooth, cold, and precise. Let's put that theory under a microscope. Let's introduce a few more measurable variables into this evaluation, I said, leaning back slowly like I had hours to burn. Let's discuss something with actual weight, investment. Colton blinked back at me, clearly lost, like I'd just dropped a calculus problem in his lap. Most of you know Hannah's in her second year at law school, one of the best in the country, and believe me, the cost reflects it. I glanced around the table at my friends, several of whom understood the sacrifice, stress, and marathon work weeks behind covering that tuition. And I'm footing the entire bill. No loans, no grants, just me. It's not only a financial commitment, it's a statement of belief. Belief in her potential, belief in what we're building together. I let that land, heavy and intentional, then turned my attention back to Colton. So here's my question for you, Colton. Since you seem to think you're the expert on what's best for Hannah, what exactly have you done lately to contribute to her future, other than running your mouth about me? Colton turned pale so fast I thought he might keel over into his glass. Hannah shot me a wide-eyed glance and whispered, Austin, please don't. I didn't look her way, just raised a hand to cut her off, gaze still fixed squarely on him. I'm not finished, I said, each word clean and razor-edged. She tried again, but I flicked my eyes at her and shut it down. No, not now. You need to be quiet. I held up a finger like a teacher correcting a kid caught whispering during a test. You sat there and said nothing while your dear Colton tried to humiliate me in my own home. You just watched like it was some reality show. So now, while I ask him what he's never had the guts to say out loud, you don't get to interrupt. That's balance, Hannah. He got his moment, now it's mine. She froze, mouth open, but no sound came out. I turned back to Colton, lips curled into a smirk that dared him to squirm. The room had gone completely still. My friends, they were hanging on every word. This was better than any drama they'd streamed all year. Let's start with her car, I said coolly. Dependable, safe, gets her to and from campus without issue. I bought it. I paused for effect, then tilted my head at him. You've got a vehicle too, right? That temperamental convertible that spends more time in the shop than on the street. Very bohemian, very edgy. I gave it a beat, watched his throat tighten. In fact, if memory serves, Hannah's lent you money at least 3 times in the last half year to fix that thing. Money that came from the joint household account. One that, just to clarify, I'm the sole contributor to. I leaned in slowly. So really, Colton, not only am I investing in Hannah's success, I'm also underwriting your artistic lifestyle. I flashed a smile so sharp it could have sliced marble. Don't mention it. One of my friends lost it, let out a stifled snort, tried to pass it off as a cough. Too late. The crack in the room's composure had been made. Colton looked like I'd just served him legal papers. His jaw clenched, eyes flicked toward Hannah, silently begging for backup, but she wouldn't meet his gaze. And lastly, I said, leaning forward just slightly, my tone dropping to a low, cold pitch. Let's discuss the roof over her head. I gave it a breath. I own the house, I said flatly, eyes never leaving his increasingly pale face. I do the repairs. I maintain the structure. You, meanwhile, have been late with rent so many times Hannah's had to cover for you, with money I earned. I leaned back now, folding my hands like a professor ready to close the book on a lecture. So let me just recap your case. For the table, not the courtroom. Sorry, slip of the tongue. I could hear a few of the guys shift in their seats, trying not to laugh. They knew what was coming next. Your argument is that the guy who pays for her education gives her transportation, and provides a stable home, is somehow less worthy than you. The guy who takes her money, drains her resources, and tries to sabotage her relationship because you're jealous, bitter, and obsessed in a way that honestly borders on disturbing. I paused deliberately, letting the weight of that conclusion settle across the table like the last line of a closing argument. So, tell me, Colton, is that a fair interpretation of what you believe? He opened his mouth, closed it again, like a fish suddenly realizing it's on dry land. I tilted my head slightly, voice laced with ice. Too complex for you? Probably all that logic tripped you up. Not really your skill set, huh? I leaned forward again, this time lowering my voice to a near whisper. Let me break it down so you can follow along. Everyone leaned in closer. My friends saw this moment coming a mile away. But poor Colton, he never stood a chance. Here's the reality, I said, counting each point off on my fingers. You don't own a home. You don't have a consistent roof over your head unless Hannah bails you out. You can't pay your rent, can't fix your own car. She's been propping you up with money that I earn. I let that sentence breathe before delivering the final blow. You don't have reliable employment. Drawing taco illustrations might feel like art to you, but it's not enough to build a future, yours or hers. You can't finance her goals. You can't support her aspirations. You can't even fill up your gas tank without groveling for help. I stared directly at him, voice clean and surgical. Bottom line, you're a failure, a petty, envious hanger-on clinging to people with actual ambition and drive. Colton looked like all the color had drained from his face. And that, I added, voice now quiet and lethal, is what's really eating at you, isn't it? You despise successful people, not because they hurt you, but because they remind you of how small you've chosen to stay. So you lash out, you mock them. You tear them down while sitting in a house I bought, drinking wine I paid for, under a roof I maintain, at a table I built. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence settle like a blade slicing clean through the room. That's the truth about you, Colton. You're not her guardian. You're not some romantic ideal. You're not a misunderstood creative genius. You're just a spiteful, broke little boy desperate to keep her small enough not to notice she's already outgrown you. The silence that followed felt crisp, perfect, like that split second before a judge bangs the gavel. Colton didn't say a word. He couldn't. He looked like someone who'd just had the wind knocked out of his soul. His mouth opened for a moment, then shut again. He stared at his wine glass like it might offer advice or whisper a way out. He was finished, like a witness torn apart during cross-examination, too wrecked to continue. I glanced around the table. My friends were watching him like jurors about to convict. Faces tight, eyes locked. If looks could file legal motions, he'd already be served with a restraining order. One of them muttered just loud enough to hear, "What a disaster." Then I looked at Hannah. Her face was a flickering storm, shock, embarrassment, fury chasing each other, like lightning across her features. But what struck me most wasn't relief or any trace of appreciation. It was anger, pure, burning fury. She pushed back her chair with a screech, standing so abruptly the legs scraped across the floor like nails. Her entire frame was trembling, like I'd just insulted a saint instead of exposing the leech living off her kindness. "I cannot believe you just did that," she hissed. Her voice cracked between melodrama and rage. "You embarrassed him, in front of everyone." I raised my wine glass, took a slow sip, leaned further into my chair, and replied, "He did that all by himself, Hannah. I just walked everyone through the evidence. Prosecutor style. He committed the offense. I read the charges." Her glare turned molten. "Say sorry to him," she snapped, pointing at me like I was on the stand. "Right now. Apologize to my best friend for what you just said. If you don't, we're finished." And there it was, the grand ultimatum. Dramatic, final, dripping with the kind of emotional flair better suited to soap opera finales. I turned to Colton, who was still seated, deflated, staring into the wine I'd paid for like a man attending his own funeral. This was the hill she was choosing to die on. This was the man she stood up for, the man she covered rent for, the man who thought success meant being upright before noon. She was defending the remains of someone I had just proven to be a manipulative sponge, and she picked him. My feelings for her didn't erode slowly. They were executed, clean, fast, and final, like a hit job in a dark alley behind a five-star restaurant. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't raise my voice. I just offered a soft, resigned smile. The kind you give a kid who insists that cartoons are based on true stories. Then I said, voice calm as a closing statement, "All right, then we're done. You know where the door is. Take him with you." Without saying another word, I got up, picked up my wine glass, yes, the expensive one, and walked into the kitchen, leaving her behind in the now hushed dining room with her pet project of a man. The trial was over. The decision was final. Hannah looked like she'd been slapped by a ghost, stunned, furious, her face twisted in a mix of betrayal and disbelief usually reserved for tabloid-level breakups. She grabbed Colton by the arm like she was rescuing a wounded animal, and together they exited in dramatic fashion, like the last scene of a budget soap opera, complete with bad acting and forced tears. She moved in with him that same night, a decision driven by a cocktail of rage and humiliation. In her mind, she'd made her stand. She expected me to beg, to come crawling back, professing eternal regret like some second-rate movie character holding a boombox outside her window in the rain. She didn't understand that I had already accepted her terms. For the next 2 weeks, I vanished. No calls answered, no texts returned. The messages came in waves, first furious, then confused, then downright pathetic. But I wasn't there to read them. I was in the sun, poolside, on a proper vacation. No arguing, no drama, just palm trees, silence, and zero discussions about why an unemployed guy with no radiator is somehow misunderstood. I took a few photos of myself with a drink in hand, never posted them, never shared them. They were just for me. A visual reminder, this is what peace looks like. Some of our mutual friends called me, expecting I'd want to hear her side, but no one defended her. "Honestly, you did what needed to be done," one of them said. "Give it a few weeks," another told me. "Right now she's pretending that Colton's a good life choice, but eventually she'll realize she traded steak for canned soup." I just laughed, ordered another drink, and thought, maybe she'll come to her senses, or maybe not. Either way, not my concern anymore. I became a ghost, well-dressed, employed, sipping premium wine, but a ghost all the same. Instead of chasing after her, I turned my energy to closure. The house, once a symbol of us, now felt like a financial crime scene. Not the violent kind, more like emotional embezzlement. Someone had been laundering dysfunction through the decor, so I handled it like an executive handling a merger's fallout. I boxed up everything that belonged to her. Sweaters, scented candles, novels she never read but displayed for clout. I didn't rage through the house. I wasn't angry. I was methodical, surgical, like Marie Kondo in full courtroom mode. Does this item bring me peace? I'd ask myself, holding up a throw pillow shaped like a cloud. Nope, I'd answer, and toss it into the box like I was delivering a verdict. After everything was packed, I stacked her boxes neatly in the guest room, a tidy exhibit of every wrong turn, and moved on to business. I changed the locks, updated the alarm codes, and poured a drink. Then I made 2 necessary, uncomfortable phone calls. Both were outcomes directly connected to the decision she made that night at the dinner table. The first was to the dean of admissions at her law program. I had a solid relationship with him from my alumni outreach, so he picked up quickly, cheerful as ever. "Austin! Always good to hear from you. What can I help you with today?" "Well, Dean," I began, my tone as neutral as a corporate conference call. "This isn't one of those uplifting conversations. Due to what I'd call a permanent shift in my personal circumstances, I'll be shutting down the private scholarship I set up for Hannah, effective immediately." There was a short silence. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Is everything all right on your end?" "Oh, things are just fine," I said, smiling even though he couldn't see it. "Sometimes your investments don't pan out. Sometimes the economy changes. Sometimes people reveal themselves to be daytime drama material. We all adapt." He cleared his throat politely. "Understood." Click. That was settled. Call number 2 was to the managing partner at my firm. I'd bent over backwards to get Hannah a summer position there, an opportunity that would have fast-tracked her into big law in record time. He answered sounding rushed, which worked in my favor. "Austin, hey, I've only got a minute before a meeting." "This won't take long," I told him. "We've got a serious issue. There's a direct and irreparable conflict of interest. The internship offered to Hannah needs to be pulled immediately." He hesitated, then chuckled awkwardly. "Withdraw it? That's not something we usually do. Everything okay?" "Oh, sure," I replied smoothly, reclining in my chair. "If by okay, you mean I discovered the intern I was mentoring has decided to play house with someone who's been actively undermining our relationship. It poses, shall we say, complications in a mentorship setting." He laughed nervously. Well, I guess that changes things. It definitely does, I cut in, pleasant but firm. I hate bureaucracy, but I'd rather fill out HR paperwork than turn this place into a personal soap opera. And just like that, by 5 p.m., 2 professional doors I'd once opened for her were respectfully closed behind her. No yelling, no slamming, just a very formal, very quiet click. I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it because my support was tied to a shared future. She bulldozed that foundation so she could no longer live under its roof. Exactly 14 days after that dinner, she showed up at my door. I watched the whole thing unfold on the security feed like a bad episode of a low-budget dating show. First came the confusion, fumbling with the key. Turn, jiggle, nothing. Second try, still no luck. By the third attempt, she was practically attacking the lock. Then the realization hit her like a slap. Of course, the locks change when your role changes from girlfriend to uninvited guest. Next came the fury. It swept across her face like one of those fast-forward flower bloom videos. Finally, defeat. She rang the bell. I opened the door with the chain still in place. Always good to keep a buffer when your ex looks like she's one tear away from a full public meltdown. She looked terrible. All the righteous anger from 2 weeks ago had been drained and replaced with something sadder, exhausted regret. The kind of look people get when they realize cohabitating with a self-absorbed pseudo-artist means discovering the joys of cold showers and no groceries. "Austin, we need to talk," she said. I offered a polite smile. "No, Hannah, we really don't," she blinked. "You're just going to throw away 3 years over one argument?" Tears already formed, which I admit was impressively quick. "Argument?" I laughed, a flat, dry sound. "No, that wasn't an argument. That was the curtain being pulled back. You had a decision to make. Stand by your partner of 3 years or throw your support behind the guy who's been sabotaging us from the start. And what did you do? You demanded I apologize to him. You bit the hand that supported you." I leaned closer through the gap in the door, lowering my voice. "You defended the leech. That's not something I forget." Her expression shifted. Panic began creeping across her features. She tried again. "But everything we planned, law school, the internship—" "Oh," I interrupted calmly. "About that." I let the silence hang heavy. Her eyes darted, already bracing. She knew. "Your tuition's due next week, right?" I asked casually, like I was discussing the forecast. "I hope you and Colton have figured something out. My investment in us? It's been liquidated." Her skin went pale. "What?" she whispered. "And as for the internship at the firm," I continued, tone sharp and unforgiving, "that opportunity has been withdrawn. We don't do internal drama. It's a liability." She actually stepped back, hand flying to her mouth like I just told her the building was on fire. That internship was everything. It was the path she'd banked on, her golden ticket to a high-paying career. And now it was gone. Just like that. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Austin, please, don't." "It's already done," I said flatly, arms folded. "Remember that ultimatum you gave me? Apologize or it's over." Well, I chose over. Actions have consequences. Her eyes welled with tears, threatening full dramatic meltdown mode, so I twisted the knife. "Why not go ask Colton for help?" I offered, voice low and cold. "The man who's apparently so much better than I am? Maybe he can fund your education. Maybe he can get you another internship. Maybe he has a startup idea involving macaroni art or handcrafted incense. Who knows? The world's full of opportunity." She let out a strangled cry as I closed the door, her tear-streaked face the last thing I saw. And here's what might surprise you. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken either. What I felt was stillness, like a courtroom gone quiet after the ruling's been read aloud, and the outcome was exactly what everyone expected. Hannah's world crumbled faster than a discount bookshelf. With only months left, she was forced to leave law school behind, her once bright future dimmed. As for her and Colton, last I heard, they're still sharing his shoebox of an apartment. Word from mutual friends paints the picture clearly. It's a flavor of misery that even reality TV would reject. Apparently, she now simmers daily in blame and bitterness, marinating like an oversalted steak in cheap soy sauce. Colton's the scapegoat for everything: the tuition she lost, the internship that vanished, and the fact that her career trajectory took a nosedive straight into the passenger seat of his clunky, exhaust-spewing Corolla. And Colton, poor guy. He's waking up every morning next to a walking, breathing symbol of all his mistakes. He won the girl, sure. But what he really got was the version with factory defects. Resentful, disappointed, and carrying a financial burden large enough to sink an entire economy. The irony's almost poetic. He got the prize all right, but the prize came dented, disillusioned, and with no return policy. He scored, but instead of a touchdown, he fumbled it at the 1-yard line and celebrated like a fool. I'd feel bad for him if I wasn't too busy enjoying my drink. Just so we're clear, none of this was about payback. Revenge implies late nights plotting and scheming with evil laughter in the background. This was pure math, cause and effect, rational, quiet. I did it for me. See, relationships are contracts at their core, and she broke the cardinal term, loyalty. You don't show up with a smug saboteur and expect me to keep sponsoring your dreams. This wasn't retaliation. It wasn't punishment. That's what you give a dog for chewing on your boots. This was a legal consequence, a triggered clause. She came in swinging with ultimatums like she was trying out for her first courtroom drama, so I accepted. She wanted to know what done looks like. Now she understands. Done means the financial aid disappears. The opportunity fades. The place you called home becomes just another locked door. It means the funding dries up, the support ends, and the one person who was laying the foundation for your future packs his bags and walks off the construction site. And what's left behind? Just her, standing alone in the ruins of what she helped burn to the ground.